செல்வத்தின் நிறம் என்ன அப்படின்னு சொல்லிட்டு பேச போறாங்க. அவர் இந்த ஒரு பேனல்ல வித்தின் ஷார்ட் ஸ்பேன்ல இவ்வளவு பெரிய பேனலை உருவாக்கி கொண்டு வந்திருக்கீங்க. ராம், வருக. நேர தட்டுப்பாடு இருக்கு, அதனால லெட்ஸ் ஹிட் தி கிரவுண்ட் அண்ட் ரன்னிங் ரைட் அவே. தேங்க்யூ.
நன்றி கால்டுவெல். இதுல இந்த பேனல் ரொம்ப மல்டி கல்ச்சுரல் பேனல்னால நான் கொஞ்சம் இங்கிலீஷ்ல இன்ட்ரடியூஸ் பண்ணலாம்னு இருக்கிறேன். ஏன்னா அவங்களுக்கும் இது புரியும் இல்லையா? அப்பாலஜி அண்ட் ஐ வில் டூ இட் இன் இங்கிலீஷ். ஸோ கலர் ஆஃப் வெல்த், நீங்க இது வந்து கலர் ஆஃப் மணிங்கிற மூவியை ரிலேட் பண்ணலாம். ஆனா இது வந்து ஒரு this is a very serious topic right now. In the country that we live in, with people of color and lots of other issues that are going on, the analysis of this panel is about wealth and the impact of wealth in the community that we live in. So that is the key thing, is we're going to talk about by having education and entrepreneurship and creation of wealth, how does one community fuse into the place they are, like in this country? How do we come and how do we survive and be part of everything else? Now, it is not only for this country. This is a global issue. And this is something the great panelist here is going to talk about it. And I first introduce the moderator of this panel, and I will just shut up because these are the experts who can talk. And the moderator is Dr. Suji. Now, I don't want to give her all her educational credentials because that will take time. Let me put it this way. She's a many doctorates she has got, and especially in the education and also the impact of cultural aspects into education. So without any time, I welcome the panelists and I give this control to Suji to take it over. Go ahead, Suji.
Thank you so much, Ram. Ram Sonamadri, Vanakkam. Welcome everyone. Good afternoon. We are going to conduct this panel mostly in English, but if you need any clarifications, please text. I will be happy to clarify it in Tamil for those that are needed. We are very happy to be here, and we thank Ram for giving us the topic, really coming up with the color of wealth. The topic and the vision is his, and we are trying to make sure that we will take it further and clarify it for our common public and our audiences this afternoon. So when it comes to wealth, it's what you own minus what you owe. So it's pretty simple definition, but color of wealth is complex because we all belong to different colors and shades when it comes to wealth and owning wealth. So we have a great list of panelists here who are going to talk a little bit about their background, their personal experiences and encounters with wealth when they were children, and then also go along talking about people-centric solutions to provide equitable economy. So it's going to start from being really simple to getting very complex and intriguing. So I greatly look forward to talking to all of these eminent people. We have diplomats, we have lawyers, we have students, and we have business owners in this panel today. So it's going to be a variety of topic discussion. I look forward to that. So first of all, I want to talk and welcome Mr. Shatrugan Sinha, who is our Deputy Consul General of India, that's in New York. We welcome you, sir, this afternoon.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for joining. We also thank you so much for staying so closely connected with our community during these challenging times. It is very helpful. It's been so helpful for us. Thank you so much. So I would like to kickstart this conversation this afternoon with a very basic question. So in India, we have seen a lot of middle-class families talk about their forefathers. So they say 5 generations ago, we had a lot of wealth, a lot of income, and a lot of money in jewelry. And 4 generations ago, my grandfather owned a lot of like 100 acres of land and so forth, and then we lost it. So what do they really mean by it? And do you believe personally that an average Indian family has an awareness of their household wealth and how to sustain it? Just, generally what you believe.
Thank you so much for that. It's a very interesting question. I think it is more because of nostalgia. People feel that the old times were better, and although conflict and crises always besiege the mankind. People have this nostalgic approach towards the past. What I feel is, in India, equality has improved. There has been economic growth. If you just see the per capita income growth over a period of maybe last 30 years, you will see a drastic change. India is now a $3 trillion economy. The per capita income has grown in leaps and bounds. What has really happened is everyone in India now feels that there is a stake in the system. They have a stake in the system, and they need to contribute to the economy. Now, government has also taken a lot of efforts in driving this equitable growth. For example, the financial inclusion aspect of it. Few years ago, poor in India were not allowed to have bank accounts. The Jan Dhan initiative of Prime Minister Modi has really put financial control in people's hands, especially among the poor. Although initially these accounts were supposed to be zero balance accounts and were just open to provide financial access to the poor. Now billions of dollars worth of money is there in these accounts. So what has really happened is the country has grown aspirational. The youth has more access to information, has access to uh, the various quality of life improvements which everyone looks up to. The people look for this social mobility. So they feel that if there is a delay in achieving that, there is some nostalgia that probably the previous time was better. Now, you especially mentioned this 100 acres of land. Now, had land reforms not taken place, probably those landlords, the zamindars, would have been happy. And for example, in our neighborhood in Pakistan, there are 500 families which control almost the whole of Pakistani agricultural land. So I don't know whether that is good. Unless you have land reforms, unless people have access to some resources, they will not be able to rise in life. And that is what has been the approach of Government of India. And overall, I think we have been successful, although there are challenges which remain. But I'm sure we will keep moving forward.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. It gave a great opening conversation. So I wish to bring in Devi next. She comes from a very highly regarded education. And so I wish to bring her in to give a perspective of education. Introduce yourself, Devi, and then talk to us a little bit about how we can bring up this equitable economy through education.
Excellent. Thank you. Vanakkam. So it's indeed a pleasure and a privilege to be invited on this panel, and especially with such accomplished panelists. Allow me to introduce myself once again. My name is Devi Alamelu, and I am a trial and civil litigation attorney practicing in New York City. As mentioned, I have had the unique opportunity of having gone through a cosmopolitan upbringing. Being born in the United States, I was raised in Singapore, schooled in Boston. I had the opportunity to attend a convent school in Uti, India. I completed my schooling in California. I was able to obtain my bachelor's degree focusing on molecular biology and criminal justice, and ultimately going on to study law in New York and going on to be admitted to the bar in New York and New Jersey. Now, one thing is these opportunities that I had to pursue education were exactly as a result of the emotional and financial support of my parents. If there's a singular reason why I chose to study law, it's because of the inspiration I got from my great-grandfather, Dr. R. Malagappa Chettiar, who himself was a barrister at law. For those who are unfamiliar, he's a legend. He was a successful entrepreneur who was actually called the uncrowned business Maharaja of the South in the 30s and 40s. And this is reviewed by journalists who have spent time analyzing entrepreneurs in India over the millennium. When it comes to my great-grandfather, he turned out to be one of the great philanthropists of South India, being knighted by the British at the tender age of 35, and going on to establish an educational campus. What he did is he rejuvenated a virtual jungle of 1,000 acres into a galaxy of institutions. And this was in the hinterlands of Tamil Nadu. And this is in Karaikudi, the location, which is in the south of Madurai. And the thing is he recognized the importance of education and how it empowered people and communities and truthfully positioned them for success. And actually the institutions he founded to this day have now produced over 3 million alumni. And so it was really that foundation that I grew up, and again, I realized the value of education and how it could revolutionize one's life. A little bit more about me is that, throughout my academics, it's always been intermingled with extracurricular activities, which again, I am fortunate that came from the opportunities that my parents were able to provide for me. I was able to, pursue performing arts. I did Carnatic music, Bharatanatyam, hip hop dancing. I was able to take part in competitions. I had a keen interest in sports. I was able to diversify and, also most importantly, use, the passion that I had and what I learned from my great-grandfather and my parents to give back to the community. And I volunteered in helping communities, devastated with national disasters and other things. For instance, I still am involved in the institutions in India and in Karaikudi in trying to find ways of how we can increase the quality of education and reach out to more and more individuals. Today, I work at the Manhattan office at the Legal Aid Society in New York. I am a staff attorney and I am the lead delegate of the Union of Attorneys. I go into court every day, or just about every day. And when I go to court and walk into the courthouse in Manhattan, one thing I can say is I don't see minorities represented adequately. And one thing I recognize is that my colorful background has really sparked that fire for me to fight and advocate for people today. And again, this all comes from the education that I was given and provided. And I really recognize that, that upbringing plays a huge role in what I do today, the confidence I have. And it was because of those opportunities provided that I am able to do what I do now.
Oh, we are so amazed. What a beautiful narration. Thank you so much for openly talking about your background and, also touching upon certain topics that are challenging and where you are focusing. So in line with the education topic, I would like to bring in Valeria, who is a star student of mine, and I'm so proud to have her here today. She will also talk about education, but from a different perspective because she was born and brought up in Peru. So she's going to bring that perspective into this conversation this afternoon. Welcome, Valeria. Introduce yourself and talk about Peru in general. How does Peru handle wealth? And then what happened in your background?
Thank you so much, Professor Iyer. Good afternoon, everyone. It's a pleasure to be here to meet you all and talk about Peru and wealth. Well, Peru is really known for its tourism and commerce. So it has a lot of income in that, but instead, poor people, the number of poor people is twice as much as the number of wealthy people. And that's because it is growing, but mostly in the private state. Like wealthy people are growing while poor people are not growing, they're going backward. And well, that's because being wealthy in Peru means to own a company. There are not a lot of startups. Companies are have been there for years, and well, parents give the company to children and so on. So also, there's not a lot of opportunities to study because there's not help of the government. If you have money, you can study. If you don't have money, you can't study. That is in high school or elementary school as universities. There are public schools, but they're not as well as a private school. In public schools, you can learn a second language like English or other language. You only speak Spanish. And in universities, yeah, there are public universities, but for example, there are 500 spaces and 10,000 people apply. So being in a public university means that you are really dedicated, you study a lot, really smart. So that's what I think it has to change. Talking about me, I come from a middle-class family. My parents, fortunately, were able to pay for my college. So I studied industrial engineering as my bachelor. But while I was going to the university, I could see all these students that came from wealthy families. They were studying business to take charge of the companies. My school has degrees in business, engineering, and law, and 90% of students were in business, while 10% were in other careers because business is like the degree that most people study because of this, because of owning the company of their parents or learning how to do it. So, and that comes my two biggest challenges that I had when I was in my undergrad. I wanted to study abroad. So, and since I couldn't study English in my high school, I had to learn it by myself because my parents were paying for my school in college. So I was like, I will learn it in YouTube. Well, nowadays with technology, you can really learn everything. And also finding the resources to come here to do my graduate studies. With a lot of research and data, I could find how to pay for it. So that's really great. And also being wealthy in Peru, it means living in this rich neighborhoods, which are really different between a middle-class neighborhood and a wealthy neighborhood. You can really see the difference. Not like, for example, here you cannot see the difference between middle class. It's almost like a wealthy neighborhood. And well, I think that's a lot about wealthy in Peru. It's really you need money to study, and it's not like talented people that really want to study can or are able to do it because money is really important in that country.
Very true. Thank you so much. You brought up great points, like, about the middle class community and how you are, struggling to get into that college of your choice because, example, like two families may make the same amount of money, but based on their wealth and the household wealth that they have, they afford many things. Like, they want to live in the neighborhood of their choice. They want to get the education of their choice and also pick the career of their choice or even start a business. And that limits the household health really limits them in doing all three. So thank you so much for sharing that. Folks that are watching, Valerie is looking for a summer internship, so she's up for grabs, and I'm here to vouch for her. She's extremely talented, bilingual, and a stellar student. So I'm very proud of her. Thank you, Valerie, for joining us today.
Thank you, Professor.
Absolutely. So we go back to an Indian American flavor from Sharanya. So her background is pretty interesting because she told me that she drove around on an imported Mercedes in Mylapore when she grew up. Mylapore is a small suburb in Chennai. So we bring on Sharanya, who's a young lawyer, and just to have her talk a little bit about her background, her encounters with the household wealth and so forth, and then she will come later on to talk about the solutions and all that. So firstly, we welcome you, Sharanya, to give a little bit of an introduction.
Thank you very much. Thank you for the opportunity. And I'm really excited to be part of this panel with all of you esteemed guests. Thank you for allowing me to speak a little bit about my background. As Suji mentioned, I was born here in the little town called Toledo in Ohio. My parents were the first wave of physician immigrants that came to the United States in the mid-70s. Following them, of course, a huge wave came in and has helped in our country becoming more diverse in that way. But my parents moved to Toledo, which was not very diverse at the time. So when they had my sister and I, their thoughts were, wow, we don't see any, cultural diversity here. Maybe in a couple of years, we'll move back to India. So let's send our daughters back to India first so they can get settled down. And then we'll follow suit, right? Just like a lot of potential expats think they're going to do. So my sister and I were sent to India around when I was 5. So that was around 1990 or 85. And I grew up there pretty much with my grandparents. But I was the kid that got to come to America for summer vacation every year because, surprise, surprise, my parents really didn't move back. I was a physician and he was pretty much set in the ways that things were done here in the United States. When he came to India to try and explore setting up some kind of a medical practice, he was like, no, this is not going to work. I'm going to have to stay here and figure something out. So the decision was made that they would stay there. My sister and I would grow up in Chennai. And we would visit them every summer, and my parents would come whenever they could to visit us. So I had sort of this living in two worlds simultaneously going on, which I loved. I loved it because I felt like I could immerse myself in India and the Chennai culture and be with my family. Whereas over the summer, we would transition to coming here to the United States, watching all our American shows, eating the American food and soaking that in. So I really did end up being the product of two completely different worlds, which I'm very thankful for, language-wise, culture-wise, movies, music. I'm into everything. And the reason I could do that, it all boils down to household wealth. The fact that my dad had been successful and he was able to kind of give us both those lives. And I was known in this classroom and at school as, oh, that's the girl who gets to go to the US every summer, because we're talking about the late 80s and the early 90s here. Traveling to America was not that common. And so I had some notoriety because of that. As a result of which, I think that to a certain extent did help boost my confidence level, because everyone knew who I was and wanted to hear my story. And for someone at an impressionable age, that can really, really help. And it helped me. I figured I could talk about my experience. It made a difference. People were interested in what I was going to say. So in that way, I think I received an extreme boost from my father's or my parents' household wealth. Education, just like Devi was saying, education was very important. It was a focus in my family. It was understood and assumed that we would all get into some kind of profession. In fact, the default profession was physician, but I refused. I said, no, I want to do something different, because everybody in my family is a physician and I wanted to have some variety in there. So just yesterday, it's funny, my 12-year-old was asking me, Mommy, why did you decide to become a lawyer? You're sometimes stressed because of your work. You're always on edge about this deadline and that deadline. Why did you want to become a lawyer? And I actually had to think about my response. And I said, you know what? I don't have a very awesome, concrete response for you. It was, I grew up watching a lot of Tamil movies, and always the women lawyers in the movie made a difference. They ultimately won the case at the end of the day, and they made a huge difference. And I would always look up to them and think, I want to be that woman in that black coat talking to that male judge in that way. So that was really a childish way to think about it, but it was sort of an inspiration. Okay, I want to head into that path. And of course, my family's household wealth and the opportunities that it brought with it did pave the path for me to explore that career. So I moved back to the United States right after my 10th grade and finished my high schooling here, my undergraduate degree here, and my law school here. So initially, I was working with a law firm for many years and was a salaried employee, but then I got bit by the entrepreneurial bug sometime in 2017. And I was like, you know what, this has been fun. I've learned a lot, but I think it's now time to take control of my own destiny. And when I made that decision, My husband was very supportive. And again, I could make that decision and take that risk because of the comfort I had in his financial security, the financial security that he was able to bring to our little household, and the fact that I could go to that ledge and just fall off pretty much, because that's what it feels like when you start a business. It feels like you're free falling for a certain bit, but then you take control. The parachute opens and you're like, okay, I can do this. It's going to be smooth sailing for a little bit. But it's been the most exciting ride of my life. Having my own business has been the best decision. It was the most difficult decision, but the best decision that has in fact helped enhance my own household wealth. And I think I made the decision at the right time.
Oh, that's so awesome. Thank you so much. It really flew in so well. There were some great points that you made regarding the household wealth and, how people make a decision as they go along. And it really depends on your parents' decisions too, right? And it's awesome that you made the transformation and you were bold enough to sustain that. So there's a question that's coming on it. But let's move on to Tiffany. Tiffany brings in a different flavor. She comes from a military background, and we can't wait to hear about what she has to say about the color of wealth. Go, Tiffany. Are those fireworks for July?
Hi, I have been having some connection issues, so I am sorry. Can you hear me okay now?
Yeah, we can hear you. Go ahead.
That's
Tiffany.
what I'm concerned about.
Yeah.
Can you hear me? Are you? Okay. Wonderful.
You just have a little fireworks going on for the July 4th, but that's okay. Go ahead.
Oh, okay. If anyone is there anyone else that can go first? I can join from another device here, but it would take.
Sure. Do we have Jack on the line? Can we bring Jack? That's pretty exciting. Jack, can you hear us? Can you say a few words? Okay, so I think we'll give them a little bit of time. They're having some technical difficulties. But what I wanted to mention about Jack, he's joining back. So, hey, Jack, are you able to see us? Thinking. Hi, Jack. Can you hear us? Can you hear us?
I'm having trouble.
You're sounding just.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can. Just go ahead and talk. So I'm going to introduce Jack Poola, who's a businessman who came here a very long time ago and has been really successful. And there's something very special that I wanted to mention about him is he has been instrumental in FETNA for so many years. And, to the fact that today happens to be his birthday. He is 82 today. Let us all wish him a happy birthday. And each year during FETNA, he even forgets his birthday and starts contributing to the community. So I really wish to call on that. Happy birthday, Jack.
Happy birthday.
Happy birthday.
This is Jack Poola. We seem to have a problem.
Oh, yeah. So he mentioned to me that he came. Oh, that's great. Thank you so much. Thanks. Yeah. So Jack came with very less money, and he started the business and became extremely successful. Those that are in the Indian community know him. So go ahead, Jack. Can you say a few words? Even if you can just connect through audio, that's fine. Can you say a few words?
This is Jack Poola. I seem to be having trouble.
Can you talk? We can hear you. I think he's having. So Tiffany, are you ready to jump right in? Yeah, go ahead. Go ahead.
A learning curve. I feel like every new event is a new piece of technology and a new adventure.
Exactly. That's what more. Yeah. Interesting.
But I assume you all can hear me better now. I've borrowed a computer and we're rolling. Okay, good. Well, I'm so honored to be invited today, and I'll say first off that I am not a member of the Indian community. I am, but I'll tell you a little bit about my background and where my story does come from. And I was recently asked to join this panel and found the topic really, really interesting as I think part of the dialogue of what many of us are speaking about. I am an Army veteran, as mentioned, but I also grew up in a military family. So a little bit about my family background, and I think both color comes into play, but I also think that a huge point of this, and what I'd written down to talk about today, was generational wealth and shifting in generations as they move. So my father was a white American who from Kansas, who grew up though in a very poor family. His father was a preacher. His parents had survived the Great Depression. My grandmother often said, if she didn't know how to sew, her kids wouldn't have had clothes. If she didn't know how to grow food, her kids wouldn't have eaten. So, a typical Midwest family that survived the Depression. And that was where my father came from when he joined the military at 17. My mother, however, was an immigrant who came to the US from Panama when she was 5 with just her mother and her sister, and again, in search of a better life. And probably as much as I don't know is enough about Indian culture, Central American culture, just a quick note there, is many of us come from Afro-Hispanic descent. So meaning my great-grandfather was a Black man from Africa with African descent. And it's a mix of tribal people and very multiracial would be the term. So my mother came from a very multiracial background, and my father came from a poor white family in America. And I share that to say that I think one of the really unique experiences and one of my passions about the military is that I think often the military has been an avenue, especially in this country, but also in many parts of the world, for generations to find new opportunity, for generations to come up from poverty. And so I think for my family as a whole, that was very true. My father and my uncle joined the military. My father joined when he was 17 and graduated from high school. And I think really elevated our family to a middle class. And, with that progression, I also, as a woman from a multiracial background, I graduated high school at 17 and myself joined the military. Went into the Army, and for lots of patriotic reasons, as we approach the holiday weekend, I won't deny that, that certainly growing up on military installations and going to my father's ceremonies had a patriotic impact on me. But I will also say that the military was another avenue for myself for opportunity. Through the GI Bill, after my service, I was able to not only finish my undergraduate, but also my graduate education and rehabilitation counseling, and set myself on a career path, not only as a professional, but also in giving back to my military community. That's really been my professional life since. I now lead military and veterans outreach for Barclays Bank in the Americas, but I've also worked in the nonprofit side and in other areas. And so there's a few lessons that I really want to take from this. And I'll share one more personal thing in this, is I now live in a house in New Jersey. So in Florham Park, New Jersey, that's 100 years old. And one of the things that was very shocking to me was when we bought this house a year ago, I got a copy of the original deed of the home. Are we okay? I got a copy of the original deed of the home. And one of the things that was shocking about that original deed of the home is that it says non-Caucasians cannot live in our neighborhood.
Yeah.
Explicitly in writing that non-Caucasians cannot live in the neighborhood that I live in. And so when we think about what's going on, in the world and in our country, when we think about this idea of the color of wealth, so much of it, as you pointed out, is generational wealth and generational opportunity. And so as we think about this topic, I think about not only how does an individual succeed, but where are those turning points where they can shift for their families for generations. And that's the only way that we really change any of this, right? Or that we really create equalizers, is for individuals to find ways that are not only going to affect their life, but are going to shift things for the next generation. So for me, education has been a big part of that. For my family, military service has been a big part of that. But as I also can look at the research in the military community, veterans, people who've gone out of military service, have actually been incredibly successful as entrepreneurs, as another way to shift generational wealth. They're starting businesses at slower rates than the past, but historically, after World War II, after Vietnam, they actually came back and became leaders of industry and started businesses, and actually have been really successful in starting businesses in downturns. And so I think entrepreneurship is one of those really critical avenues, and education is one of those critical avenues to not just build wealth, but to build generational wealth.
Oh, thank you so much. Thank you, Stephanie. You brought a great information, and also shared a lot of information about the military and the background in entrepreneurship. So that I greatly appreciate that. Jack, are you able to hear us? Could you say a few words? Go ahead and say something. Can you talk? I think he's stuck. So Jack mentioned, when we were casually chatting last night, Jack mentioned that.
Trouble.
You're having trouble? Oh. So he mentioned that when he came to this country, he didn't have a lot of support. So that's something that I wanted to bring up today, because I just don't want his point to be missed. He said he had to partner with his friends to start that business. But today we have organizations like ATEA that are here to support our young entrepreneurs or people that want to transform like you do during your midlife, and also militarypreneurs that would like to, start their own businesses. The organization is here to offer mentorship, also support. And sometimes, you could find great partners here that you want to partner up and grow your business. So that's available through ATEA. I just wanted to mention that, and Jack appreciated that. So with that, we close round one and then move on to talking about some solutions, right? We wanted to create people-centric solutions to these problems. And then so we bring our Consul General here again. And sir, could you highlight a few policies that are in India that are encouraging to people that wish to get some education in business as well as start their own businesses? So this way, their families don't complain about losing the household wealth or not being able to sustain household wealth, because some of them have very few wealth left and they wanted to either sustain it or even start growing it. So could you give us some information on that?
So India is a very exciting place for startups now. As probably you are aware, the Startup India campaign has really helped many of our entrepreneurs, especially young people, to start business and to further grow it. Now, apart from that, government has also come up with something like Mudra scheme, where without collaterals, somewhere around $7,000-8,000 is given as credit to entrepreneurs. So things like those have really helped a lot. But generally, what I would say is government's involvement in education, unlike in the US, where the higher education is mainly in the hands of private initiatives. The universities, the high quality universities are mostly in private hands. In India, it is government led. So what that has done is it has provided access to everyone. If you have if you have merit, if you are good in studies, I'm sure you will get admitted in one of these high quality colleges, and then it is a path to as Tiffany pointed out, probably the generational wealth. You move up in the social ladder and do well. So it is basically a combination of affirmative action by the government and individual initiative. I think the scale of the challenge in India is so big because of our population, because of our resource constraints, that we really need to work harder. And I'm sure there is sufficient entrepreneurial energy within the youth, especially keeping in mind the young demographic profile of our country, that we will keep growing, and the quality of life, the level of education is all going to improve further.
Okay. Thank you so much. That's very promising to hear, especially for the youth of India. That's extremely promising to hear. And thank you so much. Please stand by for our closing remarks. So Devi, you did mention that you come from a large educationist family. And what kind of reforms does private colleges or private educational institutions offer for young entrepreneurs that want to start their own business or even think about, partnering with someone to start a joint business and, really create that wealth for their household.
Absolutely, yes. Well, I mean, to even address that, I mean, one of the things is to also recognize, the disadvantage that students would face and not even in having that the quality education to begin with. And so it is essential for institutions and organizations to be able to provide that support. I mean, to kind of understand the disadvantage in the first place, I think it's well, first of all, I can say that as a proud Tamilian, I mean, I've understood that education is something that we've highly valued in our society, in our community. And there's no question that there's disparity from child to child depending on the income of the household. And when children don't have that access to the same education that so many others have, you run into issues of this domino effect of, you cannot afford to go to a school, cannot get the quality education, don't have access to, learning materials, advanced learning materials, tutoring, ability to, prep for standardized test examinations, kind of build on resumes, take advantage of internships, be able to cite and reference names of well-known individuals that would come from networking and being in that environment where you have that opportunity to meet such distinguished people who are so accomplished. And when you already start with that disadvantage, everything comes down to what can we do about that in order to be able to, provide that. If someone comes from a household where already they see that their parents are struggling to make ends meet, they already, again, are not, they come from an environment where it is difficult for the child to have, where it's instilled in them for that desire to excel. And the thing is oftentimes, when we don't see success or when we have children who don't see what success looks like, that limits what they see as their future and potential. And so going back to kind of the policies and things that institutions can do to really foster and enable that, it definitely comes down to one of the first things being mentorship, right? And so in mentorship, that kind of goes again to being able to see what that looks like for you, being able to see what it's like to take those risks, to do everything you can to acquire the knowledge. And I know it was already mentioned things like, with the technology today, trying to take advantage of seeing what is available online. But even to take a step back, we also deal with individuals who don't have access to the internet to be able to access technology. So we go back again in kind of the roots of what are the things that we can do. And so for one thing is that whether it be an institution or whether it be each one of us taking it upon ourselves to play a role in this, there are things that we can do, like even volunteering our time. So many of us with the education that we've learned, we can offer tutoring, we can volunteer and pair up, be that mentor, provide that connection, provide the materials that we were given, the technology that we were given, and similarly expose students and children to the idea that things are possible. And although you may come from a background where you may not see it immediately, again, the importance here would be for us to continue that, and definitely with the institutions, that's something that we focused on. And kind of on topic to this is, I think that a really nice example is, I have, there's my relative who instituted a foundation, kind of taking underprivileged students who clearly had the burning desire to learn, but just didn't have the means, gave them personalized education, right? So it's almost kind of starting at square one, giving them the same exact access and education to what they didn't originally have and what so many others, are fortunately able to have. And the result of that actually showed that the education and access to it was all that it takes, you know, and what we learned and what I was able to see from, you know, seeing the foundation and its success is that it actually created those opportunities for the for those students. And every student, you know, we all have our way in defining what's success, but if we want to say, you know, on paper going to an Ivy League school is success, they were able to show that training got them into every, you know, Ivy League school. So again, it comes down to what we can provide, and institutions play a critical role, and that sometimes involves doing, you know, holding the hands of the very same people that we want to push forward and help us all grow.
Fantastic. So well defined. I really accept the fact that, you know, creating that success roadmap is essential, because more than inspiration, I believe Valerie and I can resonate on this, because we talk about it every day in the class. I say, think like an entrepreneur, think like a CEO, you know, so creating that success roadmap is key. So we move on to talking to Sharanya, because she is a wealth advocate. So we have a very basic key question to you, Sharanya. Could you differentiate between when someone says I'm rich versus someone says I'm wealthy? You know, what does that mean to us, and how do they define that? The difference between rich and wealthy.
That's a very interesting question, and I thought more about it as you and I discussed it yesterday a little bit. So my practice, I think, helps me kind of put this into perspective, because on the one side of the spectrum, I represent moderately wealthy to wealthy clients with respect to their estate planning matters. So these are families that have taken great pride in accumulating wealth over the course of their lifetime, have made smart decisions, and take great pride in being able to transfer that wealth to the next generation. So on the one hand, I work with clients who have that kind of situation. On the other end of the spectrum, my practice also involves dealing with clients who may have to potentially file a bankruptcy. So these are two different ends of the financial spectrum. And I've often wondered, you know, about the families that come to see me with financial problems. Yeah. I could count, you know, maybe in two hands or maybe four hands with another person's help, the number of people that I have met who have had to file a bankruptcy because of very poor spending habits. Contrary to public notion, I would say that's very rare. Usually the people who come to file for bankruptcy are individuals who have been hit with, you know, bad health, business failures, and just some bad luck. So, and oftentimes these are families that make six figures. So you would think that they would be rich in the general context of the term, but they have not been able to accumulate wealth, right? I filed bankruptcy cases for individuals, families who make $150,000 to $200,000. Which is obviously a very decent income with two small kids, but they have not been able to make ends meet. And I think that is because of several factors, but I could talk about a couple of them. Poor spending habits, poor saving habits, which I think fall into financial literacy issues, and sometimes just pure bad luck, as I want to say. That's when health comes into play. If you've had a major health issue and you have been self-employed and don't have health insurance, that could bring you down in a jiffy. So that I've had a lot of clients deal with. So while they make the income, they could technically go into the rich category. Right. Bad luck that they've had with health issues is not letting them accumulate wealth. That's one issue that I've noticed. And the other one is financial literacy, where maybe you've made poor decisions with what kind of business you should enter into. Maybe your risk analysis wasn't good. Maybe you guaranteed more debt than you were able to generate through your business. So again, good business decisions and having a flavor for entrepreneurship, I think, is important before you jump down that ledge. Just a quick note about financial literacy. I had the good luck to be involved with a program called Resistance Education, where I went into high schools with bankruptcy judges to talk to high school students about, look, you're about to embark on this journey. You're going to walk into a college campus next year, and credit card companies are going to be fawning all over you, asking you to open up a credit card because they know that your parents' deep pockets will pay the credit card debt back. But good habits begin early. And my job was to educate them about what to look out for. And when you do open up that credit card, do not be tempted to swipe it at every opportunity, because it's so easy to do that. Be smart about it so that as you grow into adulthood and you have the opportunity to make money, you understand how to keep the money and accumulate it so that you can, on the other end of the spectrum, be in that phase where you can think about, how do I transfer this wealth now to the next generation? And I think that's a better place to be. But there's all factors that go.
Great point, Sharanya. You made a great distinction between wealth and being rich. So I would like to end this. We do have like 5 minutes. So Tiffany, very quickly, what is one top resource that you would offer to veterans? So just veterans, what's the key resource that you have?
Yeah, I will be careful, but I do want to go back to just what I said about the deed to my house and generational wealth. What I wanted to say to entrepreneurs in general, including veteran entrepreneurs, is to access all of the unique resources available, veterans, women, minorities, and to never, I think too many people think that it should just be a level playing field. And the truth is, those of us who are in positions of systems, we've got to put our thumb on the scale, because that deed alone tells you that that families were blocked from building generational wealth. And I share that specifically about the deed because real estate is the #1 way in the US that wealth is passed down, right? And if you've been blocked from access. So looking for grants and those things that are available, veterans specifically, check out the Coalition for Veteran-Owned Business and Small Business Administration. But same to the Small Business Administration is a great place to start for all diverse candidates, but look for what's available to you based on where you come from, because it's not that you're not being dealt a favor. It's about evening the scale just a bit more.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. So Valeria, just as an ending statement, if you were to change one policy, educational policy in Peru, what would that be?
I will totally be that create loans with low interest rate for students that can't afford the university, or create more spaces in public university, increase the budget for public university so more people can go there. And actually volunteering is a key also. When I was in college, we volunteered to teach students that couldn't afford university about business, about finance, English too. So I think that's also key, so they can be more like experienced and know a little bit about it. And when the possibility comes, they can study more about it.
Great. Thank you so much. Yeah, that wraps up. So, Dr. Sinha, we just wanted to ask you one final question. We know Sharanya mentioned about financial literacy. How are we trying to accomplish that in India?
What has really happened in India is after demonetization in 2016, there has been a great movement towards formalization of the economy. The digital aspect of financial transaction has really taken deep roots. Apps like Paytm or UPI Bheem, they are all pervasive. People across the board, across different classes of society, poor or rich, everyone is using those apps. So I think with these smartphones in hands and financial inclusion in place, the financial literacy is on the rise. It is again a combination of the financial entrepreneurship. The fintech sector, for example, has a great future in India. Most of even the bigger banks based in West have moved a lot of their fintech back-end operations back to India because of the skill of the engineers. So all these factors combined, the scale of the market, the fintech talent available in the country, as well as this movement towards digitalization of the economy, all these have come together to improve financial literacy.
Absolutely. I think that you have all the facts in your fingertips. Thank you so much for joining us. So that makes you really great. So I just want to end this session with me not doing the final note, but bringing in Ram Nagapan, who was key in coining this term called color of wealth. So it was a great discussion. We see so many colors even on the screen. So Ram, now all eyes are set on us, which is the ATEA and yourself and your leadership. So what do you have in terms of how do you bring this transformation to blend in all the colors and bring that change and bridge the gap? What is ATA up to?
So thanks for this colorful panel. So there's one thing I want all the people who are looking at it remember. Just one thing. Because the more I said, you won't remember many things. There's one thing. as an organization which cherishes entrepreneurship. We want all of you to become successful entrepreneurship. What happens? You will generate household. Yes.
Yes.
And you will give it to the community. You will generate jobs. You will generate lots of other people get better. And that will impact the community, and you will be welcome in that community. So just remember, entrepreneurship, creating something, an economic booster in the country or in the place where you live is the key. And that is the color of wealth.
Thank you so much, everyone. We look forward to talking more about this topic, and thanks for the opportunity. Thank you so much. Have a great evening.
Yeah, thank you, everyone. Really appreciated. And like Ram said, appreciated your participation and looking forward